people today. They could spend half their lives over 50. That's a lot of living. So it helps to have a wise friend and fierce defender in your corner. A friend like AARP. So your health lives longer.
This is just slow-mo karate?
Just slow-mo karate.
Your money lives longer.
I just bought that.
I just sold that.
And your happiness lives longer. That's why the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Join today.
Welcome to AARP Illinois' virtual event. It's so wonderful to have you with us. AARP is on a mission to connect with individuals across various communities, especially those aged 50 and above. We're here to listen, understand, and address the unique needs of you and your community as we age. Our goal is to enrich your experience by expanding our local activities, providing opportunities for you to discover and engage with all that life has to offer right here in your own community and virtually. As we journey through today's event, we invite you to consider joining our dedicated team of AARP volunteers. It's a chance to make a meaningful impact and help us better serve those 50 plus across the nation. Connect with us and be a part of this vibrant movement toward positive change. Welcome, and let's make this event both fun and transformative.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for AARP Illinois' virtual event. My name is Lori Hendren. I'm a Senior Associate State Director with AARP Illinois, and we welcome you for joining us and giving part of your day to us. We're grateful you joined us. Today, we have a very important and timely topic. It is the challenge of overcoming isolation for seniors, especially during the holiday season. The holidays are meant to be a time of joy, connection, and celebration. But for many seniors who live far from their loved ones or face limited social interaction, this period can amplify feelings of loneliness and isolation. Seniors, particularly those who are distant from family, often find that this time of year brings unique challenges, from missing familiar traditions to navigating emotional difficulties. Today, we aim to provide practical tools and insights that help seniors take the first steps toward connections and resilience. We are honored today to have a returning guest Kate from Life Changes Counseling and Care Planning, a licensed therapist, an expert in senior mental health and community engagement. You may have seen her on WGN in Chicago recently talking about this issue. Kate's experience and passionate approach will guide us all through understanding the root causes of isolation and finding effective solutions for building meaningful connections. Sometimes it just starts with a conversation, and we're offering that today. This event, Holiday Healing, Tools for Seniors to Overcome Isolation, is really designed to empower seniors and those supporting them with actionable strategies for building social ties and fostering a sense of belonging during the holiday season. By the end of the session, we hope we leave you equipped with the knowledge, practical steps to combat isolation, bridge those emotional gaps, and find those first meaningful steps toward connection. So let's get going. Kate, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you coming to us today. To start, what are some of the main factors contributing to the feelings of isolation among seniors during the holidays?
Of course, we know that isolation can happen year round, but the holidays in particular are sensitive in many ways because we're surrounded by these expectations of what people experience between themselves, family, friends, their communities. So there's a lot of pressure to fall into what might be a stereotypical experience of personal connection, loving connections, meaningful connections, and for some people, also gift giving, which can sometimes be a bit of a stress.
Absolutely. No, that's excellent advice. So let me get back to my script. So, next question: how can seniors who live far away from their relatives take those first steps to build or rebuild those connections, even if, to be honest, they're feeling a little hesitant or unsure, a little anxiety?
Yes, anxiety and a little bit of reservation is completely understandable, especially if you're already feeling some aspect of being disconnected or not having as meaningful of a relationship as you might want with family members or friends. And of course, if you're living at a geographical distance, that makes that connection opportunity that much more challenging because we have to either sort out ways to be able to connect with busy relatives by phone, or if we're comfortable with technology through video chats, etc. So one of the first things that I do think can be helpful if you are feeling anxious or having some reservations, check in with yourself. What is
Mm.
it that is giving you those feelings? Is it that maybe there was an uncomfortable interaction that happened recently or in the past? Maybe it's that you're not sure what topics to bring up. You don't feel like there's a lot that you share in common with the people. Or maybe if you've been out of touch, there might be some feelings of embarrassment or concern that you have been out of touch. And how might it be received if now you're showing up during the holidays wanting to have connection? So check in with yourself, like what's telling you about that reservation. Get familiar with that, and then determine what's the next most helpful step that I can take related to that reservation. So that reservation or anxiety that you're feeling, that might be inside. That might be something that you're feeling, or it might be outside, something that was related to the other person or other circumstances.
Mhm.
So I think it's really helpful to be able to parse that out so that you can determine, oh, this is where my reservation's coming from. That gives you information on how to begin to address it. And if folks have any questions or concerns or examples they're willing to share in the chat or in the comment, I'm happy to do a little Q&A around that specifically.
Absolutely. Thank you. And for all of you that are joining us on Facebook or YouTube, we welcome you. Put your comments, your questions in here. You got a guru here. We're not alone. We do a self-check and let's talk about that if you're feeling. And I really like that. A lot of times we just jump in and get nervous or anxious, but we don't take a pause and try to understand a little bit of why that feeling or that anxiety is there and kind of come to that understanding, even just privately with yourself. That's great. Can you
Mhm.
share ways that family members who are not geographically close and support seniors and help them feel connected despite the distance? Like, I live in Illinois, my father lives in Arkansas. We talk, a lot, but for some people that doesn't help. So how does the family members, the kids or brothers and sisters or, reach out? How do they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Number one, I think it's making the commitment to setting a time in your schedule to be able to do the outreach. It's very easy for any of us with any of our relationships to have relationships fall by the wayside in the midst of everything else going on, let alone during the holiday season. So maybe sort out, do you have a sense of your loved one's schedule? Do you know when they're around? Do you know when they're available? If so, parse out maybe even 5 minutes to be able to connect with that person in the way that they're comfortable connecting. And that might be a little bit of a frustration for people sometimes. We want people to be open to connecting in the ways we want to connect, but that doesn't always work. We know that many
Mhm.
older adults are very effective with technology, want to do Zoom, want to do FaceTime, might even be on TikTok or something like that. But other older adults are not as comfortable with that interactive technology, or they might just not have access to it or access
Mhm.
to reliable internet that would allow for it. So reach out in the way that is most comfortable for that older person. That might be phone or something else. And then if the person is open and able to use technology, I really do think that there's something unique about being able to see a face, read body expressions. We know that as humans, we're wired to connect. We're wired to be with other people. And so the
Mhm.
more that we can try to support our older people in being able to use interactive technologies, I think that that can be even more meaningful for the older person. And
Mhm.
I know we have some other questions, but as I was preparing for today, I also remembered that for people who maybe just feel like there's no time to connect through a conversation or something else, we can talk about other ways of showing that we care, even if we're not able to have a person-to-person connection with the older adult.
I think so. I've been with ARP for 10, 11 years, and this was I probably am guilty of this, is that I want to connect with my parents via FaceTime. And so I go off and buy an iPad for Christmas and think, "Oh, it's just so easy." As children, as caregivers, be cognizant that is not a solution. This is just me. That was not a solution because it took onboarding time to understand, get the Wi-Fi set up when they get home. And
Mhm.
if, be mindful of that, because we may not be, as you said, delivering conversation and connection in a meaningful way that is comfortable for our loved one.
Right.
So yeah, that's a very great point, to meet them where they are. And even like if you're, I think you're an adult, or if you have kids, or you have a busy work schedule, it's okay if on your own device, put a reminder, 4 o'clock, call so and so. That is okay, because when you're driving and picking up and doing all of this, use your technology to benefit and to help harness that conversation. Those were, yeah, I really like what you said there. What advice would you offer seniors who are hesitant about reaching out or joining new social activities due to that feeling of discomfort, anxiety? I've always worked, 60 hours a week. I've had kids sports. I've never had to do this. And now I'm having to start over. What
Mm.
is your, what's your advice?
Yes. Number one, you're not alone. Number two, some of the things I mentioned earlier about reservations. Check in with yourself. What are those reservations about? You gave some good examples. Some of it might be, I've not had to do this.
Mhm.
Like, where do I even begin? So, if part of what we're looking for is new opportunities, we might want to ask, do we want opportunities to be related to older adults? We know that there's a lot of different services, both in person and online, that are out there tailored to older people. There are senior centers that almost every region is going to have access to. In urban areas, those might be a little more concentrated and easy to get to, might be a little more challenging for folks who are tuning in from rural areas, but they are there. So, senior centers across the country, there is also a movement that's called the Village Movement. And this is really meant to be older adults supporting each other in local communities. And so there is, I believe it's called the Village to Village Network. You can find that website and see if there is a village in your area. That can be a way of connecting with other older adults. There's programming, education events, social events, things like that. And then also, sometimes we don't necessarily want to connect with other older people. I hear this all the time from my clients. I don't want to go to a senior center. That's
Sure.
totally fine. What are some of your areas of interests? What are things that you care about, that you're passionate about, that make you feel alive inside? Are there local organizations or groups that you could connect with?
AARP.
Exactly. AARP as well. That might cut across all ages. I'll often say, if we can find other people who are our people, right? They like
Mhm.
what we like. They approach the world the way that we approach the world. Sometimes we can find that through special interests groups, classes, adult continuing education, libraries, park districts. Those might be some other ways of getting connected. In your local community in person rather than online.
Mhm. And with AARP, we have in Illinois, we have 1.7 million members, but we have thousands upon thousands of volunteers. And it's truly that we're going to meet you where you are, whether you like the social interaction of doing, because we host movies for grown-ups,
Mhm.
greeting people, welcoming people, you like teaching classes, you enjoy lobbying. And I think that's important. If you're with ARP or with your another organization, it's find exactly what you said, find what you enjoy. I know, you don't always want to go to a senior center because you may feel that's not your environment, but there's so many opportunities. Volunteer at a hospital, take a chance, because if but that's where it is. It's connecting with humans and knowing that you're in a presence with others. And
Yeah.
it may take a little bit, but it's just that conversation. And I don't think takes a lot of courage.
It
It takes
does.
a lot of courage, and I applaud everyone. And for individuals who are widows, I mean, that again, you had that spouse for maybe 30, 40, 50 years, and your whole environment has changed. And it takes courage and that support from your loved ones to say, go try, go,
Yeah.
even if it is a part-time job. And you may not even read the resources, but it's a time schedule. You know the people, you may know the jokes that are coming, but it's that feeling of knowing, I'm coming and I'm going to be there. I just can't emphasize that enough because I'm 46 and I just think of my schedule now. We go, 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 go. And then all of a sudden life changes and it really does take that moment. Your colleague yesterday said something and I tweeted about it and we put it on Facebook. When a caregiver falls, when a caregiver stumbles, everyone falls.
Yeah.
And I think that's, powerful in this conversation too, is that we got to be in check with everybody in their journey. So let me go back. What are some effective techniques for seniors to manage these feelings of loneliness when they're physically alone, particularly on holidays? Because for
Mhm.
some people, holidays aren't a big source of joy from their family, their emotions, all of it being alone. What are some techniques for seniors to get through this?
Yeah, absolutely. Number one, I think it's important to acknowledge it's okay to have that sadness. It's okay to be missing people who either are no longer with you or are not there in person. So allow yourself to feel that sadness for sure. Maybe it could be helpful to either do some writing.
Mm,
Think about the people who you're missing, or maybe a tradition you're missing, something where that sense of loss is present. Write about that. And rather than focusing on the loss only, because you're probably already feeling that, once you've felt that, then reflect on, here's what I liked about that. Here are the things I miss about.
mm,
Here are the things that I loved about that experience or that person, so that you can bring back that sense of connection to the things that are no longer there. So that would be one beginning spot that allows you to just have those feelings that are real rather than stuff them and pretend that, like, no,
mhm,
I'm just going to be happy because it's not acceptable to be sad. Or if I spend time with my sadness or my loss, it's going to get worse.
mhm,
Sometimes if we ignore it, what happens is it unfortunately does get worse. But then also pair it with what is also present in my life right now. And that might be challenging to think about, but there is something there. There's probably something in your daily life, maybe something in your environment or in your community, maybe something you saw online or in on television
mhm,
uh, around the holidays. That's
mhm.
This speaks to me now. This gives me comfort now. This helps me feel connected to whatever the holidays mean to me. That might be another way of, when you're alone and not able to connect with others, to be with yourself and the complexities of all these feelings. So many times in my work with clients, we talk about the idea of trying to embrace a both and view of the world.
And
We
oh, I
can
like
feel
that.
sad and miss people and find ways to connect that things are pleasing, give us pleasure, give us meaning, give us some sense of connection to the present moment and now.
That was wonderful. I do wanna go back. You said something about writing your feelings. If that
Mhm.
is new to someone who, never done it, what is that connection? Can you explain that a little bit of for some people, they might hear like, "Why do I need to write this down? I'm already thinking it."
Yeah.
What does it matter when you put literally the old school pen or pencil to paper
Mhm.
and you see it? What is the process of that?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that's helpful about writing it down, if you're willing, is that it does actually literally take those thoughts, those feelings, those experiences from your mind and puts it onto something physical outside of you. It allows you to create this little bit of distance that
Mm,
sometimes is just enough to be able to help you connect with those feelings, those thoughts, those memories, those experiences,
mhm,
just slightly differently. So it's again the way of giving ourselves that little bit of a break, when it's all inside and not concrete, there's nothing physical about it, it's just thoughts that maybe are going through our mind, it can sometimes feel a little suffocating or too much. So by writing it out, or sometimes even saying it out loud if we're comfortable, even if we're alone,
In the
it
car.
gives us,
Yeah.
exactly, it gives us that little bit of healthy disconnection. Now, I want to be careful, right? I'm trying to say something other than distance, and disconnection is
Mhm.
what's into my mind at the moment. We never want to disconnect from our feelings, but we do want to find ways to say, here's a feeling that I'm feeling inside. And now here's that same feeling where I can look at it maybe a little bit differently.
Yeah, you can recognize it, and you can that is I don't this is I'm not a therapist, but almost validate, like, "Oh my gosh, this is what I was feeling." Okay.
Right.
Some
Exactly.
even when you see it down, you're like, "Wow," and you look back even on it a couple days later, you're like, that was heavy stuff,
Mhm.
and it was emotional, and that was okay for feeling the way I did at that moment."
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
And
How can
sometimes we can
Yeah,
also
go ahead.
look at that and say, goodness, if a friend wrote that,
Mm,
if someone I cared about wrote that, how would I respond to them?
powerful.
Right? So
That
that's
is
another way of
powerful.
having that little bit of healthy distance, that then sometimes can bring us a bit more empathy and compassion for the feelings that we're having when we're feeling
Mhm.
lonely or sad or disconnected. But we also want to remember, return also to the other things that are present, that we
Yeah.
can do. If those stories or memories maybe are telling us something. I
Mhm.
miss talking to people on a daily basis, or I miss seeing people in person. If that's
Mhm.
maybe an underlying message that you discover in your reflection, now you have some information that you can think about acting on when you're ready.
Yes, yes, that's wonderful. How can seniors navigate the emotional challenges that arise from the holiday memories, changes in holiday traditions due to distance or loss?
Yes. The changes in traditions I know are so hard for people because we connect with traditions for lots of different reasons. So, again, maybe be curious. What has created the change? There are so many different circumstances that might have resulted in change in the holiday times.
Mhm.
It may have been, as you said, a specific loss of a person, maybe a death or a divorce or some other
Mhm.
disconnection, but it might also be other circumstances. And so, can we look at what caused the change? Can we acknowledge that even if we don't like that change, even if we have sadness or frustration or disappointment in that change, what aspect of that can we acknowledge as reality and,
Mhm.
and say, if that's my reality now, what might allow me to connect with it even in the face of my sadness, disappointment, other complicated, unpleasant feelings about the shift?
Mhm.
So again, it's this way of how can we shift from seeing only through one lens of our pain to acknowledge, yeah, that pain is there. And
Mhm.
where's our next opportunity to try and find connection even in that face of loss? So, say, for example, if there's a change in a tradition that's really beloved to you and that's
Mhm.
frustrating. If you've never talked about the fact that that's frustrating to family or friends, maybe talk about it. They might not realize that that was something that was really meaningful to you, and they might be
Mhm.
more than happy to bring that tradition back. Now, if on the other hand, no, we're not going to have, I say this from my own family. No, we're not going to have 14 different dishes on the Christmas dinner table because that was the tradition. We just can't do that anymore. Okay,
Mhm.
is there a way of representing that? Or could we maybe shift then from doing the tradition to talking about the tradition? Here's where that tradition comes from. Here's why that was important to me. I miss that we're doing it. And here's our both and I know that things are different now, and I'm glad to be here even if the tradition has changed.
And that's the what you call it, both and, is that
Right.
correct?
Mhm.
Right, all right. Yeah, and everybody's traditions are so different from having a lot of dishes on the table to maybe, going to different family members and shuffling to even watching certain movies with certain people and then or, it's and then when you have grandkids, everything changes and cognizant of that and having just the courage to be able to understand and go to that and. That's
Mhm.
what strategies would you recommend for seniors to build a new tradition that fosters that social engagement and joy?
Absolutely. So at this time of year, I think it's helpful to connect with what are the holidays or what are the traditions that we're missing. We know that across America, there's lots of different diversity in traditions and holidays right now, including maybe no holiday.
Mm,
So depending on the situation, if we want to be really pushing outside of the box, what if we created a no holiday? What
mhm,
would a no holiday look like?
mhm,
Might that be something really entertaining and funny with some humor to take things about the holidays and maybe turn them on their head? Uh,
mhm,
Say, rather than being focused on gift giving, I'm going to be focused on sharing talents or sharing my information and my stories rather than a physical gift. So sometimes we can acknowledge, how do we make the holiday just like another day? That might
mhm,
be too much for some people, totally fine. Other traditions might be, again, around storytelling. How do we shift away from maybe a quote unquote holiday tradition to this is a time of connection? Here's how I connect to myself. Here's how I connect to my past. Here's how I connect to my present. Here's how I connect to my future. And how
mhm,
do I tell those stories, maybe with other people in my world, or if I'm completely on my own and I'm not ready to connect with other people, how do I just connect with that for myself as well?
mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think storytelling can be really important as well.
And I think it's interesting when you kind of phrase it as storytelling. I look back at holidays and I think of a lot of stories that are told. And I never really, but it was a tradition. It was, do you remember when grandma, or do you remember when? It's a lot of do you remember when? And it's just sitting, and those are in and of itself is a tradition, which is fabulous. So for those who have tried to reach out before and felt disconnected or disappointed or maybe even rejected, what advice do you have for them to try again?
Yes. As always, acknowledge that that was painful. See, is there something specific that happened? Can you try to solve that problem? Is there a way around what had happened that maybe could be addressed or acknowledged? And if that's possible, begin to take that step. If that's not possible, right? Some things are not in our control,
Mm,
then we might need to decide, do we want to reconnect with the place or the person, the situation where we felt disconnection? Or do we want to try and look for new opportunities? Sometimes what can happen, especially if we're lonely, especially if we don't have a lot of connections in our lives, if we try and have an unpleasant experience,
mm,
that just reinforces a belief that this isn't going to work. It's not worth it. But that's actually a tricky belief because what happens in one circumstance might not repeat in another. So, can we try in a different setting? Can we try in a different way? Maybe it's if we went to a senior center, as an example, and
mhm,
we had an unpleasant experience. Is there a different senior center we could go to? A lot of senior centers have different cultures, different vibes, different sense of community. We might not fit
mhm,
in one, but we might fit in another. Similarly, with other things in our communities, whether that might be a faith community, a library, a community center, things like that. Can we find a second alternative and try again in this new setting to see if we have a different experience? And the other thing to remember is that it's very easy to take things personally. Think that if
mhm,
someone wasn't very friendly, it was because of us. Um, more often than not, if we have an unpleasant experience, it's very often, unfortunately, about the other person. It's not about us at all, even if it feels like it's about us.
mhm.
So maybe
Yeah.
self-compassion, connect with, here are the things that are good about me, that I like about me, that I have to offer, and try to put those forward when you're able to. See if you can make those connections, express that part of yourself when you're in a new social setting, so that you're really connecting and showing your strengths rather than maybe your reservations and concerns.
Wonderful. We have a question from Facebook. How do I talk to adult children who hold different views about politics, or better, not talk about politics at all, which would be the individual's preference?
Got it. Great question.
Mm.
Yeah, we're in a tough time in the world and in America right now. Lots of tensions. One thing is to be able to acknowledge, hey, I know we have differing opinions and we have differing views. And I know that I'm not going to change your opinions and views, and you're not going to change mine. And that's okay. So if we're going to spend time together for the holidays, I would really like if we can explore not talking about politics when we're together, because I want this to be an enjoyable time for all of us, right? Make it inclusive. I want this enjoyable for us all. And I'm concerned that if we talk about politics, it's going to not be very fun for anyone. So can we find some other things to talk about that we all might enjoy, even if we don't agree about them? We can have an enjoyable conversation, maybe about favorite television shows or music or other things in life that matter other than politics. So name that, like, hey, I get it. We're not on the same page, and that's okay. So name it, say it's okay to have the different opinion, and then say, I'm concerned if we bring this up, it might mean a less enjoyable time for us all. Can we agree to therefore not talk about it and instead give a replacement idea? Instead, talk about, maybe give some other ideas of topics that you're aware of that all of you can connect on in some way. That would be my
That is the clip we need to roll through the season on replay for everyone walking in the door. Just roll through that clip. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are the steps to success. And even if I would say, even if things that are a little contentious, those are just a great way to approach the holidays and have it enjoyable. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Facebook friends and YouTube, for bringing those questions. We have gone over our time of 30 minutes, and we want to thank you, Kate. You're just a joy. Just like empowering everyone to know you're not alone. You can do it. Here's the steps: self-aware and courage, and try. And I just think of, just in life, we try so many things. We're going to keep trying as we age, and it's okay. Do it. And
That's
you're going to
not a
find your
choice.
troop. You're going to find your troop. And even if that troop is that one person, go with it. Yes, because you're not alone. So thank you so much, Kate, for sharing your insight and your professional knowledge and these really practical strategies with us today, and all listeners. To all caregivers who have joined us, we hope this session has provided you with the tools and encouragement needed to navigate the holiday season with some more peace and balance. If you're looking for further support and resources, please look at the AARP caregivers resources at aarp.org/caregiving, and we'll put those in our notes for you. If you can even just Google AARP caregiving. Just remember, your well-being is just as important as the care you provide for others, and you're not alone in this journey. We want to thank you for being with us today. We invite you for more ARP Illinois upcoming virtual events at aarp.org/IL. You can also check out our in-person events you can join. You can volunteer with AARP and find your group. Find all the things that we do. ARP is across the nation, and we welcome you with open arms to be part of that. We want to thank you, and this concludes today's virtual event. Thank you. Have a wonderful holiday.